$105 a barrel, and Wednesday they go up, and to Monday they go down, or some other version thereof, but always bouncing in this range. Jamie Ingram, senior editor at the Middle East Economic Survey. With all the shock and awe and drama, Jamie, this is kind of a boring oil market. What's your take on things?
Yeah, I know. I kind of understand what you mean there. Good introduction there with, it's a bit boring, and yet there's intense volatility. We're seeing oil just kind of, at the moment, the price being pulled apart by kind of two diametrically opposed forces. So, everybody freaks out about what's happening in China with COVID, and suddenly that affects prices in one direction. Then numbers come out about, the impact of self-sanctioning on Russian oil production. Suddenly they bounce back the other way. But really, we seem to be locked in this dance of, 100 up to 120-ish on Brent. Yeah, that's where we are at the moment. You can rinse and repeat every week, it seems.
Let's go to Muscat with Ali Al-Riyami, consultant and former Director General of Marketing at the Oman Ministry of Energy and Minerals, although I don't believe there was many minerals around when Ali was in the office. Ali, it's probably better today being a refiner than being a seller of crude oil. Crude oil is only up 15% since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Products are up 100 to 200%. That's really where the margin is at the moment. Where do you see the difference, if you like, between those two, and why we're seeing such a big margin?
Well, actually, we are enjoying both. First of all, good morning, Sean, and nice to have me. And Eid Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak too.
Actually, in Oman, we are enjoying both. As you know, that we have refineries, we have trading arm within OQ, and I think both of them are doing very well. You cannot really take the benefit out of the crude oil price that we see at the moment, and especially that Oman depends on oil and gas for their revenues and return to the government. So I think both of them are important, but the products at the moment, they are doing very, very well, which we don't really benefit as Oman too much out of that because of the shortage of our exports on products. But nevertheless, I think the prices of products will continue, I think, for the coming few months, as long as there is at least some good indications coming from States and also Europe. Although that Asia is looking very, very sad, and the lockdowns in China, they are really hurting the Chinese economy and Asian economy as well. But I think this is the reality, Sean, that we have to live with it, and let's wait and see what will happen in the future. But I think also Oman, we are benefiting somehow from both, from our product side and also from the crude oil side.
Let's go all the way over to Venezuela, Caracas. Jose Shalhoub, political risk and oil analyst, formerly with the National Energy Company there. Jose, it's always good to get an update from Venezuelan energy sector. Clearly, at the moment, it remains in challenged position, and perhaps you have the burden of having to import these very expensive products.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sean, for the invitation and for having me. Yeah, absolutely. PDVSA, which is a state-owned company, has been still facing enormous, big challenges to try to lift its, still crippling oil production, still stuck between the ranges of 600 and 700,000 barrels per day in the last recent months, still unable to recover its lost production. And recent news report have been reported that after the visit of the Iranian oil minister to Caracas, we have received shipments of Iranian crude to mix with our crude oil in order to get lighter grades of oil in order to our domestic consumption and production of gasoline, where we are still facing important problems of gasoline production in our refineries. So definitely, PDVSA is still far away from recovering, mainly because of the many challenges that our refineries are facing to get a stable production of gasoline for our domestic consumption, and that's why Iran, in the swap deal that Venezuela and Iran signed last year, it involves a swap of condensates for our oil, our heavier type of oil, which we are producing more than any other type of oil. And now we are receiving a kind of heavier crude oil in order to export lighter grades and in order to get more, gasoline production for our refineries.
Jamie, back in Europe, obviously you're sitting in London, the big story this week, and it seems every week starts out this way. Will they or won't they Europe embargo Russian crude oil? They still haven't got there yet. Some mutterings overnight that maybe the gap between Brussels, the administrative headquarters of Europe, and Hungary, one of the sort of stalwart supporters, or at least relatively close to Russia, may be closing the gap there. What's your outlook for this policy that Europe is trying to cook at the moment?
Yeah, as you say, Sean, this is kind of the big question that everybody's looking at, certainly in this part of the world anyway. Hungary's always been, seen as the key impediment to this kind of policy approach from the EU. They've been screaming about how, I think they described it as being like an atomic bomb on their economy if, Russian crude was banned from flowing into the Hungarian refiners. I think that that's a bit of an exaggeration. I think that there is sufficient flex in the system for them to import crude oil through Croatia, coming through Omisauj. I think the pipelines can go that way. Yes, it would be less efficient. Obviously, they've geared their refineries up to run on Russian crude, but this is something that everybody can manage to work around. Again, the system needs to be tweaked in order to do this, but it's nothing that should be beyond the realms of possibility. So the deal is potentially there. Whether it's something that we can come to a compromise agreement on, I think that's something that you need to leave to some of the more politically focused guys to see whether they can give enough carrots to Hungary to pull this off.
On that point, just picking up on the products topic, Jamie, of course, the question that Europe can manage workarounds on Russian crude oil, and Germany is already, it would appear, to have managed to reduce its imports of Russian crude. But what about Russian products? Because Europe also very, very dependent, about 2 million barrels a day of Russian products coming into Europe. How significant is that vulnerability, and particularly at this time?
It's huge. I mean, as you opened up with, we've heard earlier today about the impact on product cracks. Basically, the crude oil prices are high. When you look at diesel, jet fuel, the prices there are insane, really. I think that this is something where the Middle East can help out a little bit. Europe, they've been closing down refineries. The Middle East, they've been expanding, upgrading, installing new refineries. The timing was a little bit unfortunate because seasonal maintenance kicked in kind of February, March, April time. So Middle Eastern exports actually dropped of refined products, but we're seeing that being unwound now. It looks as if Middle Eastern products, middle distillates exports could hit record highs in the coming months, kind of topping 2 million barrels a day. If we look at Saudi Arabia, they've got their Jazan refinery. It's currently running about, that got brought on a year or so ago. That's currently running at about half whack at about 200,000 barrels a day. That should hopefully be ramped up to full capacity by the end of the year. Also Kuwait, we've got their big Al Zour refinery that's due online. Take some of the comments from Kuwait about when exactly it will start with a pinch of salt, because it's been delayed so often. But hopefully by the end of the year, that should be operational. And then next year in Oman, the Duqm refinery as well should help replace some of those Russian products that flow into Europe.
Ali, just picking up on that, I mean, the outlook for increased refining capacity we're seeing, as mentioned, Jamie, that both in Asia and we saw in Australia last year closures and Europe, but the Middle East, the Gulf in particular, opening. Is the timing right? Are we behind the curve, do you think, vis-a-vis this unexpected opportunity? Which, I mean, the opportunity has always been identified, but this has come a little earlier than planned.
You know, Sean, all of these projects, they've been, FIDs quite few years ago, and they were on an economics basis. And at that time, the situation changed completely at the moment. And but still, I mean, the opportunity is there. Maybe like Oman refinery or the Duqm refinery will be ready maybe late next year. But I mean, the opportunities and also the FIDs of these refineries were taken 3-4 years ago. So at that time, the economics were completely different. I see that there is an opportunity. It's never too late, and we can benefit out of this. Some of these refineries, especially the Saudis one and the Kuwaitis, are going to be ready sooner than the Omani one. So I think the faster you can bring this refineries working, it's better for you guys, because now it is an opportunity, and I don't know for how long this opportunity, the door of this opportunity will be open. Excuse me, but I think there is a chance for the Middle East to capture the upside, and we hope that. Because don't forget, Sean, that most of these refineries are also been built to cater for the local consumptions, not all of them for export. So let's just put that in our mind.
Yeah, I mean, domestic consumption is growing all the time.
It's growing very much, yes.
Yeah.
It's growing very high, and not all of it will be for export. So the shortage of the products will be there, or even with this refineries on stream.
I suppose ultimately we also in the region need to get a lot more efficient in our consumption habits in order not to consume all this very valuable product that has a big price on the international
the refineries
market.
Now they are requested to run some economics and see that maybe it is cheaper for them to import than and export their products. I mean, they need to see and think out of the box, basically.
What about, Ali, just coming back to check in with you on the crude side? We saw a report out of Reuters overnight that OPEC plus supply is now or lack thereof, I think they're complying, and it's the weird way that it's being reported. Compliance with OPEC cuts is 200% or some weird analysis on that. Basically, they're not anywhere close to meeting their supply agreement. And every month, it's obviously with Russia now being under duress, it's becoming less and less, and yet we're not getting more supply from the Gulf producers.
Well, actually, if you see the numbers of conformity, I will use the word conformity because OPEC, they don't like to use the compliance. It's not in the books. But anyway, if you see the compliance of the conformity, you will see that there are few African countries. They are over compliant, and also of course Russia because of their situation at the moment. But other countries, they are either 97 or 103 or 100%. Including Oman. So I think most of the GCC countries or producers, they are doing very well in terms of conformity or compliance. But others, they don't really support. But again, I mean, if you talk about Angola or Congo, their production is quite small compared to others, and this is where you get the compliance of 220. But in reality, if you see the barrels, I don't think that we are missing so much. Maybe 1.5, 1.4 million barrels out of 35 million. So we are almost there. The countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, they should take over this, this less of production from other countries. But I think they are stick to their guns until now that. Most of these countries, they will agree on their quotas until further notice, maybe. But I think the capacity now, I think it is better than 2 months ago of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, and they can produce more. And especially UAE now, they're coming. Some few projects are coming in on stream. So we will see from now on.
Well,
onwards,
certainly come at the end of the summer when this quota agreement ends. Maybe,
Yeah.
Jose, by then Venezuela will return to the family of OPEC and once again blossom as a major producer, inshallah, as they say. But Jose, any developments on talks with the Americans? Any signals that there could be breakthroughs there on the sanctions?
Yeah, well, there have been recent speculations and some not confirmed reports that Washington and Caracas might be retaking, these initial talks, and I think the location was going to be in Trinidad and Tobago. But as I'm telling you, it's not confirmed, nothing yet. Well, as I've been,
how would the politics of that look inside Caracas in terms of obviously the very weak opposition in Venezuela that has been struggling to build up momentum? If indeed Washington was to give the Venezuelan government some sort of pass, would the opposition in Venezuela be upset about that?
Yeah, well, the opposition still is tremendously divided. And we have presidential elections in 2024. The opposition, I mean, it hasn't been able to come, to get unified, to get some unified leader, aside from this, the so-called interim president Juan Guaido. He lost all his political capital. Nobody believes in that alternative no more. Aside from the support that still Washington, still gives him, but nobody believes in what he does anymore. He's completely evaporated from the political scene, aside from from tweeting, but I mean he's not the same leader that he was 2 years ago when the protests started, and when he's sworn himself as interim president. But you know what? The government still has the control of the country. Maduro still has control of the armed forces, and I don't see any breakthroughs or any changes that could give a hint to any political concessions or changes or major concessions in the country in the next following months. Because I mean, living here, you don't see anything that might prove you that there's going to be any significant changes, or for Washington to at least say, okay, we're moving ahead, but you have to give us some political concessions. So I don't think that Washington will move ahead with any lifting of sanctions in the next following months.
Not with oil prices only at $100 a barrel, perhaps. Jamie, we started out this conversation sort of half tongue in cheek about the lack of drama in the oil markets, given all the drama that's around it. But nonetheless, we could be, we had the big sort of day yesterday in Russia, the sort of Remembrance Day of the great Second World War victory. And now coming up on May 15th is a kind of a deadline day for real impact on curtailing Russian exports. Your thoughts on where will we eventually see a significant supply disruption coming out of Russia in the coming weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that we're already starting to see the numbers come out for April production, and that's showing big, production drops in Russia, 1 million barrels a day kind of range. That hasn't really had an impact on the exports yet. That's largely because Russian refining, a lot of refineries have reduced their inflows, so that the amount of Russian crude actually hitting global markets hasn't really been reduced so much. It's being displaced. Absolutely. We're seeing, huge volumes go to India, which hasn't traditionally taken that much from Russia, as it's basically being pushed out of Europe. I think that in the coming weeks, we're definitely going to start to see the Russian government playing hardball with its buyers, as we started to see with the gas in recent weeks as well, when it comes to payments in rubles, that kind of mechanism. So yeah, we're going to hit a bit of a defining point in the coming days there.
Let's get the survey question in vis-a-vis where the sort of macroeconomics on all of this feels at the moment. We've just talked a little bit about the prices for refined products rising between 30 and 140% since Russia invaded Ukraine, but crude is only up 15 only. It seems that's still a big number. But the point is, hence, the raising of interest rates will have limited impact on energy inflation, because the real inflation is in the products. It's in the gasoline you put in your car, it's in the diesel, etc. So hence, raising rates will have limited impact on energy inflation. Ali, the question of macroeconomic health, of course, is starting to become a big factor in the world, with the outlook for higher rates and slower economic growth. But yet, yesterday, it reported that Oman has moved into surplus. Its budget fiscal position is in a healthier place. What's your outlook for that these sorts of energy prices can sustain even while the sort of global economic health starts to deteriorate? Can those two things coexist?
Well, I think when we talk about the global, crisis, if you put it this way, and countries, I think we should talk in isolation of each one of them. I think when you talk about country like Oman, we are benefiting as a return and surplus that we have seen from the oil price and product price and gas prices. So we are benefiting as a country, but when you look at the global economy, it's not doing very well. So yes, we have a lot of what should I say? I mean, not a lot, but a good surplus. But if there is no support from the from the global economy, then it is just only to support the local country itself. So unless we see some growth in the world economy, then we can see some benefit out of these surpluses that countries they do. But nevertheless, for Oman in particular, that it helps us a lot, because we focus on reducing our debts through the international banks, and also pay some interest on those debts. And also, again, to support the local economy, and also to stimulate the Omani economy. So overall, I think this is a good news, and everybody is happy. Although that the individuals, the Omanis, myself, I haven't seen any benefit out of this surplus yet.
You haven't got the check in the post yet.
I haven't.
But at least your pension, I'm sure, is still getting paid. That's important, right?
Well, that's the good news. That's a good.
That's the good news. You know, you don't want that in jeopardy. Meanwhile, back in the ranch of Venezuela, these things are long been under stress. Jose, if I could ask you to just sort of pull out the lens a little bit, talk regionally, because of course you are in a region where there is a mixed bag of countries that are energy producers, and also ones are very big consumers. What the vulnerability to these elevated commodity prices are net across the region in South America?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this year we have just to start two critical elections in two key countries, just like Colombia and Brazil. They are important oil producing countries, but the left is poised to return to both countries, as many polls are indicating. So that is key to keep on observing, and how that will impact the situation and the oil of their respective oil industries, like Petrobras or Ecopetrol. But definitely South America is a key commodity exporter region, and all this global economic crisis is going to definitely impact the region. That's for sure.
But at the moment, there is a net benefit from elevated energy prices from a revenue point of view. I mean, not necessarily for Venezuela, obviously, given your unique situation, but for the other countries in the region.
Yeah, absolutely. For the time being, yes, but in the long term, There are many reports indicating that countries like Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, and of course, as a consequence of the pandemic, of the COVID-19 as well, the majority of the countries in South America are gonna definitely suffer from the consequences of both the mix of the COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine. That's for sure.
Jamie, looking at the outcome of the current sort of politics of the war in Ukraine, the news yesterday out of the Russian sort of day of remembrance, if you like, was expected, and everybody was kind of apprehensive that it was going to be some kind of day in which things could either escalate or perhaps the opposite. But nonetheless, it's turned out to be a relatively flat moment in terms of its indication for the conflict. Where do you think the sustainability is in Europe at the moment? Obviously, your own prime minister has been very much to the forefront of leading the charge of a European position against the Russians. Do you think that holds? Does Europe hold in that sort of robust, unified posture?
Yeah, it's taking a lot of political legwork to keep this going. I think one of the big, we might look back and see as a bit of a turning point was the French elections. If there'd been an change in administration away from Macron towards Le Pen, then that would have taken away one of the most important kind of tent poles from the current alignment in the EU and EU plus UK, Europe in general. But I think that as we're going forward, yeah, there's sufficient resolve within the leading partners here that we need, that if we take the pressure off of Russia, then that escape valve would just simply cause threats of this spilling over into other countries in the years to come, whether that's, as a direct result of this, or maybe in 2024, 2025 down the line when they've restocked their military somewhat and eased the economy. So yeah, I see the resilience holding certainly over the next year or two. I certainly think that anybody who's thinking that any sort of ceasefire might result in a resumption of flows of Russian crude oil, gas products into Europe, I think they're a bit of something of an optimist, really.
Yeah, it does feel like whatever happens, these structural changes that are happening are will be baked in for some time.
Just to add to that, sorry, it was interesting. Just Total Energy CEO Patrick Pouyanné, he very much said that he saw the current repositioning of Europe in terms of global gas markets. That's something that's here to stay. Basically, Europe energy security, importing LNG. That's a structural change that's not going to leave us.
Well, the American LNG producers are licking their lips, so to speak. Ali, let's finish off with you. Last comment, get the survey result. I wanted to get your views. It's a bit of an overwhelming agree. I hate when I ask questions that have an overwhelming agree or disagree. It means it's not a good question. You have to take note. Better question next time. Ali, the big news in this region perhaps is the absence of news on the Iran nuclear talks. They appear to be descending or have drifted into a deep freeze again. I had an interview that will be published tomorrow with a senior analyst in Washington indicating that the outcome of no deal is a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Your thoughts on the idea that everybody seems to be fairly nonchalant about no deal? What do you think about a no deal?
Well, I'm optimistic, Sean. I think this is just tactics. We have been seeing this for the last few years, and also the last time that we had a deal with Americans and also 5+1. It was a similar kind of situation. I think Iranis they cannot survive without having any deals. They will have to compromise, and they will have to come back and do something about it. Also, the Europeans and the Americans, they cannot just keep on having this kind of discussion forever. So I think there will be a compromise position from both parties to agree and to sign the agreement. But when, nobody knows. I mean, everybody now trying to play his cards and to try and force others to agree with their demands and conditions. But I think we cannot, Iranis and also Europeans, they cannot just continue having this kind of discussion forever. And Iranis, I think they were ready 1 month ago. I don't know what happened in between, and everybody knows. I don't want to repeat whatever
Yeah.
happens before. But they were ready, and I think they are ready now. But there are some few, conditions that the Iranis has because of the situation of a good oil price. Now they are not in a rush anymore to sign the deal. So it's a chicken and egg situation, Sean, and we hope that this problem or this issue will be resolved soon for
Well,
the benefit of Iranians and Europeans.
The good news, I mean, obviously, in the indicators, if it is an indicator, is the quiet on the Yemeni border. I mean, at least the ceasefire in Yemen would seem to indicate some positive outcomes, perhaps that the parties are willing to show that a deal, if it's done, could be to the benefit of the whole region. Inshallah, as they say. We need to wrap it up there. Oil prices trading this morning in Asia down a little less than 1% at about 105 on Brent after a big drop of 6% yesterday. We'll see where the direction goes as Europe wakes up and America. But for now, thank you very much to our speakers this morning for joining us on today's Halftime Talk. Jamie Ingram in London, Ali Riami in Muscat, and Jose Shalhoub in Caracas. Thank you all very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sean. Absolute pleasure.